Welcome to Audiobooks Vault. In this video, we will summarize the book The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. Let's start. Introduction. Have you ever wondered why some people effortlessly stick to healthy routines while others struggle to break bad habits? Or why certain companies thrive by predicting what you'll buy next while others fail to keep your loyalty? The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg takes you on a fascinating journey into the science of habits, uncovering the invisible mechanisms that drive our behavior, shape our organizations, and even fuel social revolutions. This book isn't just about understanding habits, it's about learning how to change them. Packed with gripping stories, from Olympic gold medalists and billion-dollar corporations to the civil rights movement and groundbreaking neurological research, it reveals the simple yet profound truth. Habits govern much of what we do, often without us realizing it. But here's the catch: habits aren't destiny. They can be reshaped, manipulated, and transformed to unlock remarkable change in your life and the world around you. Through unforgettable examples, like how Starbucks teaches willpower, how Target predicts pregnancies, or how a small-town church becomes a global movement, Duhigg shows that understanding habits gives you the ultimate advantage. Whether you want to build better routines, lead more effectively, or spark a revolution, this book will leave you eager to harness the power of habit. Dive in, and you'll discover not just how habits work, but how they can work for you. Chapter 1. The Habit Loop. How habits work. In Chapter 1 of The Power of Habit, Charles Duhigg introduces the concept of the habit loop, a neurological process that governs habits. He explains how habits emerge within our brains, enabling us to perform actions automatically, conserving mental energy for more complex tasks. Habits, according to Duhigg, are composed of three key elements: the cue, the routine, and the reward. Understanding this loop is crucial to analyzing why habits form and how they can be changed. Duhigg begins with a case study involving a woman named Lisa Allen, whose remarkable life transformation from smoking, overeating, and debt to becoming fit, financially stable, and healthy fascinated researchers. Scientists found that Lisa's transformation was rooted in her ability to identify and alter her habits. Her experience underscored the profound role habits play in shaping behavior and the possibility of change when one understands how they work. To further explore this concept, Duhigg recounts experiments conducted by scientists at MIT. These studies, involving rats navigating mazes, revealed the role of the basal ganglia, a part of the brain integral to habit formation. Initially, the rats exhibited slow, deliberate behavior when exploring the maze. However, as they repeatedly navigated it, their brains began to chunk the activity into a habit loop, requiring less cognitive effort. Over time, the rats would begin to run the maze almost on autopilot, guided by the familiar cues, routines, and rewards. The habit loop consists of cue, a trigger that signals the brain to enter automatic mode and initiate a habit. Routine, the behavior or action performed in response to the cue. Reward, the benefit or satisfaction gained from completing the routine, reinforcing the habit loop. Duhigg emphasizes that habits are deeply ingrained and difficult to eliminate entirely. However, they can be changed by altering the components of the habit loop. He provides the example of Eugene Pauly, a man with severe memory loss due to brain damage. Despite being unable to recall basic facts or events, Eugene developed habits that allowed him to perform routine tasks, such as finding his way around his neighborhood. His story highlights the power of the basal ganglia in enabling habitual behavior, even in the absence of conscious memory. One of the key insights from this chapter is the distinction between habits and deliberate decision-making. Habits operate outside conscious thought, allowing the brain to focus on other priorities. For instance, when people learn to drive, they initially pay close attention to every action. Over time, the actions become habitual, freeing the brain to focus on other tasks while driving. This automation of behavior is a double-edged sword. It can lead to beneficial routines, like exercising regularly, or harmful ones, like smoking. Duhigg concludes the chapter by discussing the importance of rewards in reinforcing habits. The brain's craving for rewards creates a neurological loop that perpetuates the behavior. For example, brushing your teeth becomes a habit not just because it is good for hygiene, but because of the clean, minty feeling afterward, which acts as a reward. This craving makes the habit loop self-sustaining. The chapter sets the foundation for the rest of the book by emphasizing that habits can be identified, understood, and reshaped. The habit loop provides a framework for analyzing behaviors, empowering individuals and organizations to create meaningful change. By modifying cues, routines, or rewards, it is possible to transform even deeply ingrained habits. Duhigg's exploration of the science behind habit formation introduces a powerful tool for self-improvement and understanding human behavior. In summary, Chapter 1 explains the mechanics of habits through the habit loop, the role of the basal ganglia in habit formation, and the significance of cues, routines, and rewards in driving behavior. It highlights the potential for transforming habits, laying the groundwork for deeper insights into how habits influence individuals, organizations, and societies. Chapter 2. The Craving Brain. How to create new habits. In Chapter 2 of The Power of Habit, Charles Duhigg explores the role of cravings in forming and sustaining habits. He explains that while the habit loop consists of a cue, routine, and reward, it is the craving for the reward that drives the entire process. By understanding how cravings work, individuals and organizations can design habits more effectively and create behavioral changes that last. The chapter opens with the story of Claude Hopkins, an advertising pioneer in the early 20th century who revolutionized the marketing of products like Pepsodent toothpaste. Hopkins made Pepsodent wildly successful by crafting a habit loop around brushing teeth. The cue was the sensation of a film on the teeth, the routine was brushing, and the reward was a clean, fresh feeling in the mouth. However, Duhigg reveals that it wasn't just the reward itself that drove the success, it was the craving for that reward. Hopkins created a desire for the tingling sensation of clean teeth, which reinforced the behavior and turned brushing into a widespread habit. Cravings are powerful because they create anticipation. Using research studies, Duhigg explains how cravings manifest in the brain. Experiments conducted by scientists at MIT demonstrated that as habits form, neural activity increases during the anticipation of a reward, not just during the reward itself. In one experiment, researchers monitored the brain activity of a monkey named Julio, who learned to associate a specific cue, a visual pattern, with a routine, pulling a lever, that produced a reward, juice. Over time, Julio's brain showed increased activity when he saw the cue, even before he received the reward. This anticipation, driven by craving, motivated Julio to repeat the routine. Duhigg also discusses the role of dopamine, a neurotransmitter that plays a central role in craving and habit formation. Dopamine surges when the brain predicts a reward, reinforcing the habit loop. For example, smokers crave cigarettes not just for the physical effects of nicotine, but also for the satisfaction their brains anticipate when they light up. Similarly, people crave the pleasure of eating unhealthy food, making dietary changes challenging. The chapter delves into how cravings can be deliberately engineered to create new habits. Marketers and product designers often build cravings into their products to ensure repeat use. For instance, the tingling sensation in toothpaste or the satisfying crunch in a snack food is not necessarily functional, but rather designed to trigger cravings. This strategy extends beyond products to services, such as loyalty programs that use rewards to build consumer habits. Duhigg highlights the case of Febreze, a product initially marketed as a solution to eliminate bad odors. Despite its effectiveness, Febreze initially failed in the market. Procter & Gamble's marketing team discovered that consumers weren't motivated to use it because there was no craving for the product. By repositioning Febreze as a finishing touch to an already cleaned room, complete with a pleasant scent as a reward, the company created a craving for the fresh smell, leading to widespread adoption. The chapter also touches on how cravings can be redirected to establish healthier or more productive habits. For instance, individuals trying to quit smoking often replace the craving for nicotine with a craving for the sense of accomplishment from exercise. Similarly, runners develop a habit of regular workouts by associating the act of running with the reward of a runner's high or a sense of achievement. Duhigg emphasizes that creating a craving requires identifying a clear cue, establishing a routine, and ensuring the reward is compelling enough to trigger anticipation. For example, successful habit formation in a gym routine often involves craving the post-workout feeling of energy or the satisfaction of visible progress. Over time, the craving for these rewards sustains the behavior. The chapter concludes by reiterating that cravings are the fuel behind every habit. By understanding and leveraging the power of craving, individuals and organizations can create habits that are not only consistent but also enduring. This insight is foundational for personal improvement, organizational success, and even societal change. In summary, Chapter 2 of The Power of Habit delves into the science of cravings and their critical role in habit formation. Duhigg illustrates how cravings drive the habit loop by creating anticipation for rewards, making habits more likely to stick. Through compelling examples and research, he shows how cravings can be engineered, redirected, or harnessed to establish new habits or change existing ones, offering powerful insights into human behavior and motivation. Chapter 3. The Golden Rule of Habit Change. Why transformation occurs? In Chapter 3 of The Power of Habit, Charles Duhigg explores how habits can be changed, emphasizing the importance of identifying and altering specific components within the habit loop. He introduces the golden rule of habit change, which states that while the cue and reward should remain constant, the routine in a habit loop must be substituted with a new behavior. This concept highlights how change is possible without completely dismantling the habit loop, making it easier to adopt new, healthier routines. Duhigg begins the chapter with the story of Tony Dungy, an NFL coach known for transforming struggling football teams into winning ones by focusing on habits. Dungy's strategy revolved around simplicity. Instead of teaching players complex tactics, he encouraged them to replace their old routines with automatic responses to familiar cues. By ingraining these habits during practice, players could react instinctively during games without overthinking. This approach allowed Dungy to turn the Tampa Bay Buccaneers into a competitive team and later led the Indianapolis Colts to win the Super Bowl. Dungy's story demonstrates the power of modifying routines while preserving the structure of the habit loop. The chapter also introduces Alcoholics Anonymous, AA, as a case study in successful habit change. Duhigg explains how AA works by helping participants replace their routines of drinking with healthier behaviors, such as attending meetings or calling a sponsor. While the cues, stress, boredom, or social pressure, and rewards, relief, companionship, or distraction, remain the same, the routine is substituted. For instance, instead of turning to alcohol after a stressful day, participants are encouraged to engage with the supportive AA community. This substitution aligns with the golden rule of habit change and illustrates its effectiveness in addressing deeply ingrained behaviors. Duhigg highlights that a key to making these changes stick is belief. For habits to truly transform, individuals must believe that change is possible. This belief is often reinforced by communities or support systems, as seen in AA or team sports. Belief enables individuals to persist through moments of temptation or challenge, strengthening their commitment to the new routine. Without belief, even well-designed habit loops may falter under stress. The chapter introduces scientific research to support these ideas. In one study, researchers examined rats running through a maze and found that altering the routine could significantly change their behavior, even when the cue and reward remained constant. These findings underscore the malleability of the habit loop and the potential for targeted interventions to reshape behaviors. Duhigg also explains why willpower alone is often insufficient for lasting habit change. Willpower can be a finite resource, easily depleted when individuals are faced with repeated temptations or stress. Instead, the golden rule of habit change focuses on automating new behaviors by embedding them within the existing structure of the habit loop. This reduces reliance on willpower by making the new routine feel natural and automatic over time. The chapter provides additional examples of how the golden rule has been applied successfully in various contexts. One notable case involves the retailer Target, which used predictive analytics to anticipate customer habits and tailor marketing strategies accordingly. By understanding and subtly influencing the habit loops of shoppers, Target was able to encourage certain purchasing behaviors, such as buying baby products in anticipation of a new child. While the golden rule of habit change offers a powerful framework, Duhigg emphasizes that it is not always easy to implement. Habits often have deep emotional or psychological roots, and changing them requires both self-awareness and persistence. He suggests that individuals start by identifying the cues and rewards driving their habits, then experiment with substituting different routines until they find one that delivers the same reward. Over time, these new routines can become ingrained, replacing the old habits entirely. Duhigg concludes the chapter by emphasizing the importance of small wins and incremental progress. Changing a habit does not require a complete overhaul of one's life. Instead, it often begins with small, manageable adjustments. These changes can build momentum, creating a ripple effect that influences other areas of life. For instance, adopting a routine of daily exercise may lead to healthier eating habits and improved sleep, reinforcing the positive outcomes of the initial change. In summary, Chapter 3 of The Power of Habit explains the golden rule of habit change, which involves keeping the cue and reward the same while substituting a new routine into the habit loop. Through compelling examples, such as Tony Dungy's coaching methods and the success of Alcoholics Anonymous, Duhigg illustrates how habits can be reshaped with persistence, belief, and support. By understanding the mechanisms of habit change and leveraging the golden rule, individuals and organizations can transform behaviors, paving the way for meaningful and lasting improvements. Chapter 4. Keystone Habits. Which habits matter most? In Chapter 4 of The Power of Habit, Charles Duhigg introduces the concept of keystone habits, habits that have a disproportionate impact on other aspects of life, triggering a cascade of positive changes. Keystone habits act as foundational behaviors that influence how people think, act, and feel in various areas. By focusing on these pivotal habits, individuals and organizations can achieve significant transformations without addressing every aspect of their behavior directly. Duhigg begins by discussing the case of Paul O'Neill, who became the CEO of Alcoa, a struggling aluminum company, in 1987. Instead of focusing on profit or operational efficiency, O'Neill made worker safety his top priority. He declared that Alcoa would aim for zero workplace injuries. Initially, this strategy baffled investors and employees, but it soon became clear that O'Neill's emphasis on safety was a keystone habit. By focusing on worker safety, Alcoa had to address inefficiencies in communication, improve processes, and foster a culture of accountability. As a result, not only did workplace injuries decrease, but productivity and profit soared. This example demonstrates the power of keystone habits in driving widespread change. Duhigg explains that keystone habits work by creating small wins, establishing a sense of momentum, and reshaping an individual's or organization's identity. Small wins are incremental achievements that build confidence and encourage further progress. For instance, achieving a consistent workout routine, a keystone habit, often leads to improved dietary habits, better sleep, and enhanced focus, even though these outcomes were not the original goals. The chapter emphasizes that keystone habits influence more than behavior, they also shape how people perceive themselves. Duhigg provides the example of individuals who start exercising regularly. Studies show that people who adopt exercise routines often begin eating healthier, smoking less, and being more productive at work. This happens because the exercise habit creates a ripple effect, fostering a sense of self-discipline and a positive identity. These changes occur subconsciously, driven by the interconnected nature of habits. Duhigg also discusses how keystone habits can foster cultural change within organizations. He highlights the importance of shared values and communal support in reinforcing these habits. For example, Starbucks trains employees to handle difficult customer interactions using the latte method: listen, acknowledge, take action, thank, explain. This training embeds a culture of customer service excellence, a keystone habit that affects employee behavior and enhances the company's reputation. The concept of willpower is another critical theme in this chapter. Duhigg explains that willpower can be cultivated as a keystone habit. Research shows that individuals who practice self-discipline in one area, such as adhering to a budget or studying regularly, often exhibit improved self-control in other aspects of their lives. Willpower acts like a muscle that strengthens with use, and cultivating it in one domain can spill over into unrelated areas. Duhigg provides a compelling example of this in the case of students participating in a program called Tools of the Mind. The program taught young children to develop self-regulation skills, such as planning their activities and delaying gratification. These skills, once ingrained, led to better academic performance and social behavior, demonstrating the far-reaching effects of keystone habits like self-discipline. Another example is the weight loss program Weight Watchers, which helps participants focus on tracking their food intake. This seemingly simple habit acts as a keystone, promoting mindfulness and accountability. As members develop the habit of logging meals, they often begin making healthier food choices, exercising more, and building a supportive community, all of which contribute to sustained weight loss. Duhigg explains that identifying keystone habits requires understanding the unique dynamics of individuals or organizations. Not all habits have the same ripple effects, so it's essential to find the ones that trigger meaningful change. Keystone habits often have three characteristics. They create a sense of structure, they are deeply connected to an individual's or group's values, and they generate a sense of progress. The chapter concludes with actionable insights for readers. To identify keystone habits, Duhigg suggests looking for behaviors that seem to have a domino effect, driving other positive changes. Once identified, these habits can be reinforced through rewards, accountability, and a supportive environment. By focusing on keystone habits, individuals and organizations can achieve substantial transformations without becoming overwhelmed by the need to address every detail. In summary, Chapter 4 emphasizes the outsized impact of keystone habits on personal and organizational transformation. Through examples like Alcoa, Starbucks, and Weight Watchers, Duhigg demonstrates how targeting these foundational habits can create a culture of improvement and drive lasting change. By understanding the mechanisms of keystone habits, readers can identify and nurture behaviors that unlock their full potential. Chapter 5. Starbucks and the Habit of Success. When willpower becomes automatic. In Chapter 5 of The Power of Habit, Charles Duhigg explores the role of willpower as a critical factor in achieving personal and organizational success. He explains how willpower can be cultivated as a habit, enabling individuals and teams to perform better in challenging situations. By developing systems and routines that promote willpower, people can learn to persevere and excel even under stress. The chapter opens with the story of Travis Leach, a young man who grew up in a turbulent household and struggled to hold down jobs due to a lack of self-discipline. His life changed when he joined Starbucks, a company that emphasized training employees not just in technical skills but also in developing willpower and emotional control. Starbucks provided Travis with a structured environment where he learned to handle difficult customer interactions calmly and professionally. This newfound discipline extended beyond his work, improving his overall confidence and stability. Duhigg explains that willpower is like a muscle. It can be strengthened with practice, but is also a finite resource that can be depleted when overused. People with strong willpower often develop habits that automate self-control, conserving their mental energy for more critical tasks. For instance, Starbucks uses a method called the latte system to train employees to respond to challenging customer situations. Latte stands for listen, acknowledge, take action, thank, and explain. By practicing this routine repeatedly, employees internalize it as a habit, enabling them to handle stress without depleting their willpower. The chapter discusses a study conducted at Case Western Reserve University that illustrates the limits of willpower. In the experiment, participants were divided into two groups. One group was asked to resist eating cookies placed in front of them, while the other group could eat freely. Both groups were then asked to solve difficult puzzles. The group that had resisted the cookies gave up much sooner than the other group, demonstrating that exerting self-control in one area reduced their ability to persist in another task. This phenomenon, known as ego depletion, highlights the importance of conserving willpower by building habits that minimize the need for constant self-control. Starbucks capitalizes on this insight by training employees to anticipate challenging scenarios and pre-plan their responses. For example, if a customer becomes angry, employees are encouraged to rely on pre-rehearsed routines rather than improvising in the moment. This approach reduces stress and ensures consistent performance. Duhigg notes that companies like Starbucks understand that willpower can be taught and reinforced through practice, making it a cornerstone of their training programs. The chapter also explores the broader implications of willpower in personal and professional settings. Studies show that willpower is one of the most significant predictors of success, often more important than intelligence or talent. For example, the famous marshmallow experiment conducted by psychologist Walter Miskell demonstrated that children who could delay gratification by resisting the immediate temptation to eat a marshmallow tended to perform better academically and socially later in life. Duhigg emphasizes that willpower-driven habits can spill over into other areas, creating a ripple effect. For instance, individuals who develop the habit of sticking to an exercise routine often find it easier to make healthier food choices, save money, or complete tasks at work. This phenomenon occurs because the discipline required for one habit strengthens the overall capacity for self-regulation. The chapter also highlights how organizations can foster a culture of willpower by providing clear guidelines and support. Starbucks, for example, invests heavily in training programs and offers employees a sense of purpose and identity. This alignment with personal and organizational goals motivates employees to stay committed and resilient, even during challenging times. Duhigg concludes the chapter by discussing the importance of recognizing moments of weakness and preparing for them in advance. By identifying potential obstacles and planning how to address them, individuals can avoid ego depletion and maintain their focus. This proactive approach is especially valuable in high-pressure environments where willpower is often tested. In summary, Chapter 5 highlights the transformative power of willpower and how it can be cultivated through deliberate practice and habits. By understanding the limits of willpower and implementing systems to conserve it, individuals and organizations can achieve greater success. Through compelling examples like Starbucks and the marshmallow experiment, Duhigg illustrates how willpower-driven habits serve as a foundation for personal growth and professional excellence. Chapter 6. The Power of a Crisis. How leaders create habits through accident and design. In Chapter 6 of The Power of Habit, Charles Duhigg examines how crises can serve as catalysts for change, enabling leaders to reshape organizational habits. He highlights how habits within organizations, whether productive or harmful, are often deeply ingrained but can be altered when a crisis disrupts the status quo. By understanding and leveraging such moments, leaders can rebuild routines and cultures that align with their goals. Duhigg begins by exploring the tragic 1987 fire at King's Cross Station in London's Underground. This disaster, which claimed 31 lives, was largely attributed to systemic failures in the organizational habits of the staff. Employees followed rigid routines and avoided stepping outside their narrowly defined roles, even in the face of emergencies. For example, workers ignored smoke because they had not been trained to report or act on it outside their specific duties. This incident revealed the dangers of dysfunctional organizational habits and the lack of cohesive systems for addressing unexpected crises. In response to the tragedy, the London Underground overhauled its operations, implementing clearer communication protocols, cross-departmental coordination, and crisis management training. This transformation was driven by leaders who recognized that the crisis provided a rare opportunity to rebuild organizational habits from the ground up. The new systems emphasized adaptability and collaboration, ultimately making the network safer and more efficient. Duhigg explains that organizations, like individuals, operate on habits that are often invisible until a crisis exposes their weaknesses. During normal times, these habits may remain unnoticed or ignored because they do not cause immediate problems. However, when a crisis occurs, the disruption forces leaders to confront these habits and creates a window of opportunity for change. Successful leaders use these moments to introduce new routines and establish better practices. The chapter also examines the role of leadership in shaping organizational habits, using the example of Paul O'Neill's tenure at Alcoa. While O'Neill's focus on safety was a strategic decision to improve operations, it also demonstrated how a leader's priorities can ripple through an organization. By making safety the top priority, O'Neill forced Alcoa's managers to communicate more effectively, streamline workflows, and address inefficiencies. These changes went beyond safety, improving productivity and profitability. Duhigg emphasizes that leaders must identify the keystone habits within their organizations, practices that influence other behaviors, and focus on reshaping them. This approach enables leaders to create a domino effect, leading to broader cultural and operational changes. A crisis often helps uncover these keystone habits, as it reveals the interconnections between routines and outcomes. The chapter also highlights the story of Rhode Island Hospital, which struggled with systemic issues in its organizational culture. The hospital faced repeated safety incidents, including a high-profile case where a surgeon performed an operation on the wrong side of a patient's head. These errors were rooted in a toxic culture of hierarchy and poor communication. Nurses were afraid to challenge surgeons, and the staff adhered rigidly to routines even when they recognized problems. Following these incidents, the hospital implemented significant changes, including mandatory checklists and open communication protocols. Nurses were empowered to speak up, and a culture of accountability was established. These new habits transformed the hospital's operations, reducing errors and improving patient outcomes. This example underscores the importance of addressing underlying habits during a crisis to foster long-term improvements. Duhigg also notes that not all crises lead to positive change. In some cases, organizations revert to their old habits once the immediate threat passes. Leaders play a critical role in ensuring that the lessons from a crisis are institutionalized and that new routines become permanent. This requires persistence, clear communication, and a willingness to challenge entrenched norms. The chapter concludes by discussing how leaders can design crises or simulate them to create urgency and drive change. For example, companies may set ambitious deadlines or stage competitive challenges to encourage innovation and collaboration. These artificial crises can mimic the effects of real emergencies, motivating teams to adopt new habits and behaviors. In Chapter 6, Duhigg demonstrates how crises, whether real or simulated, expose the weaknesses of existing habits and provide an opportunity to create better ones. Through examples like the London Underground, Alcoa, and Rhode Island Hospital, he illustrates how leaders can use moments of disruption to reshape organizational routines and foster a culture of adaptability, accountability, and success. The chapter underscores the potential of crises to act as turning points, offering a chance for leaders to redefine how their organizations operate. Chapter 7. How Target knows what you want before you do. When companies predict and manipulate habits. In Chapter 7 of The Power of Habit, Charles Duhigg explores how companies use data and behavioral analysis to understand and predict consumer habits, often before consumers themselves are aware of their preferences. By tapping into the psychology of habits, businesses can influence purchasing decisions in subtle yet powerful ways. The chapter highlights both the opportunities and ethical dilemmas that arise from such practices. The narrative begins with the story of Andrew Pohl, a statistician at Target, who was tasked with refining the company's predictive analytics. Using data from customer purchases, Pohl developed algorithms to identify life events that would influence shopping habits, such as pregnancies. Pregnancy, in particular, was seen as a prime opportunity for retailers, as it is a time when individuals are more likely to change their buying routines and brand loyalties. Pohl's team analyzed purchase patterns, such as spikes in unscented lotion or vitamin supplements, to predict which customers might be expecting a baby. Once identified, these customers were targeted with specialized advertising, offering products like diapers and cribs. The approach proved highly effective, boosting Target's sales and customer retention rates. One notable example involved a father who complained about Target sending maternity-related promotions to his teenage daughter, only to later discover she was indeed pregnant. This anecdote highlights the power of predictive analytics but also raises concerns about privacy and ethical boundaries. Duhigg discusses how companies walk a fine line between serving consumers and intruding on their personal lives. Target, for instance, began mixing in non-pregnancy-related ads with their targeted promotions to avoid alarming customers, a subtle tactic designed to manipulate habits without drawing attention to the company's strategies. Duhigg explains that consumer habits are often driven by cues and rewards, much like the habit loops described earlier in the book. Businesses leverage these loops by creating environments that reinforce certain behaviors. For example, grocery stores place impulse buy items like candy near the checkout to capitalize on the reward-driven aspect of purchasing. Similarly, loyalty programs encourage repeat visits by offering rewards such as discounts or points, which reinforce the habit of shopping at a specific retailer. The chapter also delves into the psychological mechanisms behind habit formation in consumer behavior. Duhigg explains how companies use subtle cues, such as store layouts, product placement, and even scents, to influence shopping patterns. He cites the example of Febreze, a product that initially struggled to find success until Procter & Gamble, P&G, discovered that consumers used it as a reward to signify a clean home. By marketing Febreze as the finishing touch in a cleaning routine, P&G turned it into a billion-dollar brand. Duhigg further illustrates how companies capitalize on moments of change in customers' lives, such as moving to a new home, getting married, or having a child. These moments create opportunities for businesses to establish new routines and habits. Target's success with pregnancy prediction exemplifies this strategy, as expectant parents are more likely to form new shopping habits. By identifying these critical life stages, companies can shape long-term consumer behavior. The chapter also touches on the ethical implications of habit manipulation. While businesses benefit from understanding and predicting customer behavior, this practice can feel invasive or manipulative when done without transparency. For instance, collecting data on customers' purchases or online behavior raises questions about consent and the extent to which individuals are aware of being targeted. Duhigg suggests that consumers may be comfortable with companies using their data as long as the practices feel unobtrusive and deliver perceived value. Duhigg explores the broader societal implications of these strategies, noting how they have reshaped industries and marketing. Retailers are no longer just reactive, they are proactive in anticipating and shaping customer needs. While this has led to innovations and convenience for consumers, it has also introduced challenges around privacy, consent, and the potential for exploitation. In closing, Chapter 7 underscores the transformative power of understanding and influencing habits on a commercial scale. By identifying cues and rewards that drive consumer behavior, companies like Target have demonstrated how habit loops can be leveraged for profit. However, the ethical dilemmas posed by these practices remind us of the importance of transparency and respect for individual autonomy. Through compelling examples and thought-provoking insights, Duhigg reveals how businesses are increasingly shaping the habits of their customers in ways that are both innovative and controversial. Chapter 8: Saddleback Church and the Montgomery Bus Boycott. How movements happen. In Chapter 8 of The Power of Habit, Charles Duhigg examines the dynamics of social movements and how they gain momentum by leveraging social habits. He argues that successful movements are built on three key elements: the strong ties of friendships, the weak ties of social networks, and the creation of a shared identity that drives action. Through the lens of historical and modern examples, Duhigg explains how these factors interact to transform individual actions into collective change. The chapter opens with the story of Rosa Parks and the Montgomery bus boycott. On December 1, 1955, Parks refused to give up her seat to a white man, an act of defiance that sparked a widespread civil rights movement. Duhigg notes that Parks was not the first person to resist segregation, but her actions had a unique impact because of her strong ties within the Montgomery community. Parks was well respected and deeply connected to various social groups, including church organizations and civic clubs. These connections ensured that her arrest resonated widely and mobilized immediate support. Duhigg explains that the initial response to Parks' arrest was driven by strong ties, her close friends and acquaintances who felt a personal obligation to support her. However, the movement's success depended on more than just strong ties. It relied on weak ties, the broader social networks that extended beyond Parks' immediate circle. Weak ties are essential for spreading a message across diverse groups, as they connect people who might not otherwise interact. In Montgomery, these weak ties allowed the boycott to reach different communities and gain widespread participation. The chapter also delves into the mechanics of the boycott itself. Initially, many participants joined out of a sense of social obligation or fear of being ostracized by their peers. This illustrates the role of social pressure in sustaining movements. Over time, however, the boycott evolved into something more significant. It created a shared identity among participants, transforming them from individuals acting out of personal motives into a collective force fighting for civil rights. This sense of identity provided the motivation and resilience needed to sustain the boycott for over a year. Duhigg contrasts this historical example with the modern story of Saddleback Church, a megachurch in California founded by Rick Warren. Saddleback's success, he argues, is rooted in its ability to create a sense of community and shared purpose among its members. Warren's strategy was to break the church down into small groups, where individuals could form strong personal ties. These groups became the foundation of Saddleback's culture, enabling it to grow rapidly while maintaining a sense of intimacy and belonging. Saddleback also leveraged weak ties to expand its reach. Members were encouraged to invite friends, neighbors, and colleagues to join the church, creating a network effect that attracted a diverse congregation. Warren understood that people are more likely to join and stay engaged when they feel connected to others on both personal and social levels. By fostering both strong and weak ties, Saddleback built a movement that thrived on relationships and shared values. The chapter highlights the importance of leadership in shaping the identity and direction of a movement. Effective leaders understand how to tap into existing social habits and networks while creating new routines that reinforce the movement's goals. In Montgomery, Martin Luther King Jr. emerged as a leader who unified the diverse elements of the boycott and gave them a clear sense of purpose. At Saddleback, Warren played a similar role, using his vision and charisma to inspire and guide his congregation. Duhigg emphasizes that movements succeed when they transform from being about a single event or individual to embodying a larger cause. In the case of the Montgomery bus boycott, what began as a response to Rosa Parks' arrest became a broader struggle for racial equality. Similarly, Saddleback Church evolved from a small gathering into a thriving community with a mission to serve others and spread its values. The chapter concludes by reflecting on the power of social habits to drive collective change. Whether through strong friendships, weak social ties, or shared identities, movements rely on the habits of individuals to create momentum and sustain action. Duhigg's analysis shows that understanding these dynamics is crucial for anyone seeking to build or participate in a successful movement. Through the stories of Rosa Parks and Saddleback Church, Chapter 8 illustrates how habits operate on a social level and how they can be harnessed to inspire change. By combining personal relationships, broader networks, and a compelling sense of purpose, movements can achieve extraordinary results, reshaping societies and cultures in profound ways. Chapter 9. The Neurology of Free Will. Are we responsible for our habits? In Chapter 9 of The Power of Habit, Charles Duhigg delves into the question of personal responsibility in the context of habits, exploring the interplay between free will and the automatic nature of habit loops. Through compelling examples and scientific research, he examines whether individuals are accountable for their actions when those actions are driven by ingrained habits. The chapter highlights both the power and the potential danger of habits while emphasizing the importance of self-awareness and choice. Duhigg begins with the story of Brian Thomas, a man who killed his wife in his sleep during what he believed to be a fight with an intruder. Thomas suffered from a sleep disorder that caused him to act out his dreams, and he had no conscious memory of the incident. During the trial, experts testified that his actions were beyond his control because they occurred while he was unconscious. The court ultimately ruled that Thomas was not responsible for his wife's death, as his behavior was driven by involuntary neurological processes rather than conscious intent. This case sets the stage for Duhigg's exploration of the neurological underpinnings of habits. He explains that habits are governed by the basal ganglia, a part of the brain responsible for automating repetitive actions. Once a habit is formed, the brain essentially outsources the behavior to the basal ganglia, freeing up cognitive resources for other tasks. This automation makes habits efficient but also difficult to change, as the brain treats them as default actions. The chapter also introduces the story of Angie Bachman, a woman whose gambling habit spiraled out of control and led to devastating financial losses. Bachman initially gambled casually, but her behavior escalated after a casino began offering her incentives like free trips and luxury suites. She eventually lost her life savings and even her inheritance, leaving her family in financial ruin. When she was sued by the casino for unpaid debts, Bachmann argued that her actions were driven by an addiction, a habit she could not control. Duhigg contrasts Bachmann's case with that of Thomas to examine the concept of responsibility. While Thomas's actions occurred without conscious awareness, Bachmann's gambling involved repeated choices, even if those choices were influenced by a compulsive habit. The court ultimately held Bachmann responsible for her debts, emphasizing that she had opportunities to recognize and change her behavior but failed to do so. This distinction raises a critical question. At what point does a habit become a choice? Duhigg explains that while habits operate automatically, they can be reshaped through deliberate effort and awareness. The habit loop, comprising a cue, routine, and reward, can be disrupted and reconfigured when individuals consciously identify its components and work to replace harmful routines with healthier ones. This process requires willpower and self-reflection, but it is possible, as demonstrated in earlier chapters. The chapter explores the role of cues and rewards in driving habits and how companies exploit these mechanisms to influence consumer behavior. For instance, casinos like the one Bachmann frequented are designed to create environments that trigger habitual behaviors, from flashing lights to strategically placed slot machines. These cues, combined with intermittent rewards, make gambling highly addictive and difficult to resist. Duhigg also discusses the ethical implications of such practices. While individuals bear some responsibility for their actions, organizations that design environments to exploit human psychology also share accountability. This dual responsibility underscores the complexity of habits and the challenges of assigning blame when habits lead to harmful outcomes. The chapter concludes with a discussion of free will and the capacity for change. Duhigg argues that while habits are powerful, they do not eliminate personal agency. People can learn to identify their habits, understand their triggers, and take steps to change them. This process may be difficult and require external support, but it affirms the human ability to exercise control over one's behavior. Through the contrasting stories of Brian Thomas and Angie Bachmann, Chapter 9 illustrates the nuanced relationship between habits and personal responsibility. It challenges readers to consider how much control they have over their own actions and emphasizes the importance of self-awareness in breaking harmful habits. By understanding the neurological basis of habits and taking deliberate steps to reshape them, individuals can reclaim agency over their lives and make choices that align with their values and goals. Conclusion. As the final pages of The Power of Habit close, one message rings clear. Habits are the foundation of our lives, shaping everything from the smallest daily routines to the grandest social movements. Charles Duhigg reveals that while habits may seem automatic and unchangeable, they hold immense potential for transformation. By understanding the habit loop, cue, routine, and reward, and learning to identify and reshape these patterns, we gain the power to take control of our behavior, improve our lives, and inspire change in others. This isn't just a book about breaking bad habits or forming good ones, it's a profound exploration of how habits define our identity and impact the world around us. From individuals to organizations, and even entire societies, Duhigg's insights show that change is always possible. With the right strategies and a little perseverance, we can harness the power of habits to achieve extraordinary results. As you finish this journey, you're left with a challenge and an opportunity. To look inward, examine your own habits, and ask yourself, what will you change today? Because once you understand the power of habit, the possibilities are limitless. If you enjoyed the summary, then like the video and subscribe to Audiobooks Vault. Tell us if there is any other book you want us to summarize. Goodbye.